One thing that's hard to find is authenticity. Oftentimes when we interact with each other, we tend to put on a mask of how we think we should be, kind of putting on ourselves. Oftentimes we don't really share how life is actually going, because sometimes things are difficult, or we don't want to seem like a burden to others, even though that's many times a false narrative. And it's really hard to be authentic. One thing that's really hard to fake, though, is joy. One thing that's hard to fake is joy. You can fake a lot of things, but you really can't fake joy. Either you're experiencing it or you're not. And so I think that brings up a little bit of a conundrum with today's readings. St. Paul exhorts us, and even a little bit in our first reading from the prophet, to rejoice. And they say it not as like an encouragement or something that's a good idea that you should think about, but they're commanding it. This is an imperative. It's in the imperative way. Rejoice. Again, I say it, rejoice. I think we can hear that and we can be like, wow, how can it be possible to command somebody else to be joyful? That doesn't seem like something you can command. It seems like it either just has to happen or it doesn't. So how is that possible? How is it possible to command somebody to be joyful? How is that possible? Today we celebrate Gaudate Sunday in the tradition, which is known as Rejoice Sunday. This third Sunday of Advent every year is usually on this theme of rejoicing. So how is that going to happen in our life in this kind of way? Because I don't think joy is an overwhelming experience for a lot of people. A lot of times they experience life as difficult and not joyful. So is Paul just kind of like a religious nut here telling us to do something that's impossible? How could we possibly just be joyful in this way of a command? And I think it has to do something with this. It's his line right after that. He says, everyone else should know your kindness. In some translations, it's everyone should see how unselfish you are. I think this is the key. I think this is the clue. Right? If God is joy, it's because God is love. Those two things go hand in hand. God is joy because he's a communion of love. He's this eternal exchange between the three persons of the Trinity of love. So I think Paul can command us to rejoice and to be joyful because it will be the fruit of being unselfish. If we give ourselves away, if we live a life that's self-forgetful or transcends ourselves, a life that's not selfish, then we will experience joy. You have joy in the measure you forget about yourself. And that's how Paul can make this a command, is because joy will be the fruit of our unselfishness. The more we look to others in love, the more we abandon ourselves to God's providence, the more we give in this way, we will experience joy. We will experience joy. It's not that complicated of a concept, but it's hard to do, especially for us. And maybe you've experienced this. Maybe you're having a bad day, nothing's going right, but then you sort of extend yourself in some act of charity. Maybe it's something simple around the house. Maybe it's a kind word. Maybe it's taking a little moment to pray, but you extend yourself in some way of charity, and then notice the joy follows. The joy follows. But I think this is not a common experience for us because we're very focused on ourselves. We're very focused on what we don't have, what's not yet in our life. We look in comparison to others, which is really a kind of a fascination with ourself rather than a real act of love. And these are all ways that we get robbed of joy. Have you ever found yourself maybe depressed, listless, hopeless, desperate? That's the time just to perform a simple act of love. A simple act of love. Doesn't have to be grandiose. Doesn't have to be romantic. Just some simple act of service. Caring for someone around you. And believe me, you're surrounded by people whom you can love. People who need you in some way. So when you find yourself down or listless, act. Be selfless. Be selfless. And that's where joy comes from. That's where joy comes from. I think sometimes we don't realize the power we have just to act. We get stuck in analysis paralysis. We get stuck calculating. We get stuck in self-pity. And the way out many times is just to act, just to do something. And we have that ability, right? We have that ability. Think of how much we hold up, in America especially, freedom. Think of how much we hold up freedom. We imagine ourselves to be a free country. We love this ideal of freedom. But yet when we're caught in difficulty, that's the one thing we can't do sometimes. We refuse to act freely. We'd rather get stuck in a pity party and be like Charlie Brown than do something about it. But we can. It's amazing how easy it is to act. Just the simplest of things. Then it becomes like a snowball in our life. It becomes like a snowball. It becomes like a snowball. So maybe that's the place that we pray with the Lord today on this Rejoice Sunday. Where is my heart stuck in selfishness and focused on me, looking in the mirror, metaphorically, on all the things that aren't right with me? And where is God inviting me just to forget all that and just extend myself in love? However simple it might be. Then, my friends, we will have joy. We won't have to fake it. We won't have to pretend. It'll be real. Let's ask the Lord for that gift today, just to renew our desire to forget about ourselves and to notice the needs around us, and then to love and to care. And then indeed we'll heed this great command of St. Paul. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say it, rejoice.